Let me pull up, let's see, A, B, C, F, and G. All right, so again, this is going over last week. And hopefully I can get through this quick enough where I can talk a little bit about this week as well. I know with a new conjugation, you know, it takes longer to process brand new information than, you know, other stuff. So I want to spend a little bit of time on the imperfect forms if I can. But we'll run through these real quick. Obviously, you've got the answers here. If there was anything that you didn't understand why you got a different answer than Futato, let me know. But what I'm going to point out here for the most part is what I'm seeing that may not be immediately obvious. So here, he's telling you already that these are attributive adjectives. So what I'm going to point out is in all of these cases, and I'll go through and see if there's an exception, generally speaking, you have an attributive adjective, when the adjective comes after the noun. So that, it's not always, but generally speaking, if the adjective comes after the noun, it's attributive. Okay, that's just one little tip that may be helpful for you. Now you got to check it. An adjective is never attributive when the noun it modifies has an article or is definite, and yet the adjective itself is not. That is never attributive, even if the adjective comes after. So first priority goes to the whether it matches or not the definiteness of its noun, but position is also relatively reliable. I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, an attributive adjective is going to come after its noun. All right, so that's the case here. Neither are definite, so they do match indefiniteness. Number two, same, neither are definite, but they do match. Again, rabim is the adjective, it comes after its noun. Number three, same, neither is definite, but it comes after. Number four, same thing, neither is definite, but chayot comes after its noun. Number five, both are definite, so that tells you it's attributive. And yashar, right, or actually straight here in this case. Haderech is like road, so this would be the straight road, but it comes after, and both are definite, so it's attributive. Number six, both are definite. Harabot also comes after, so let's see here. The great battles, number seven. The good land, the pure land, tahor. Both of these are definite. Excuse my cough. I promise I'm not sick. I just I've been inside a lot. Yeah, both are definite, and the adjective comes after the noun. Number eight, neither have the definite article, neither are definite, but the adjective comes after. So hachma comes after aim, so this is a wise mother. Number nine, rasha comes after mishpat. Number 10, you've got ha-kedoshim. This is your adjective coming after the noun. They are both definite. Number 11, again, it comes after the noun, tahor, so a pure heart. Number 10, he'arim ha-tovot. So ha-tovot, the good cities, ha-tovot comes after he'arim, and they match in definiteness. So that's pretty straightforward. Just check in here. Doesn't look like there's any questions on that. So we'll go on to B. Here we're looking at predicative adjectives. And so what your first most important clue is going to be that the adjective is not definite, and usually the noun is definite. Second to that, in a predicative construction, the adjective usually precedes. So the predicative precedes its noun. Again, that's maybe 80 to 90% of the time, but generally speaking, if you can remember that, it will help your fluency. You'll be able to get through a sentence quicker because just by the position, you'll have a good idea of, what the function of the adjective is. So, number one, definite article on the noun, not on the adjective. Adjective precedes, so it's predicative. Number two, definite article on the noun, no definite article on the adjective, predicative. Number three, same thing, definite article, no definite article, preceding, no definite article, definite article. Here we've got it flipped, so we still have no article on the adjective, but the noun is definite. So here's that sort of 1 in 10 idea. Here this follows the definiteness rule. These do not match indefiniteness, but it does not follow the adjective precedes. So this is still predicative because you've got a definite noun and your adjective lacks the article, so this is still predicative, even though it comes after the noun. Number 6, here we've got it, the noun, days, the adjective tovim precedes, and it does not match indefiniteness. Number 7, the adjective chai lacks the article, while hadavar has the article. And again, chai precedes the definite noun. Then number 8, gadol. Gadol lacks the article, while habait has the article. And gadol precedes its noun. All right, section C here. Focus on the difference between attributive and predicative adjectives. Read the following phrases and sentences and fill in the blanks for the use of adjective and for gender and number. So again, you've got the answers here. I'm just going to explain. The gender and number is going to be pretty straightforward. This isn't anything new. I'll point out if there are some irregulars, but I'm just going to focus on whether it's attributive or predicative. All right, so number 2, Yashar lacks the article while Ha'adam has it. So this is going to be predicative. Both of these are masculine singular. Number 3, HaMizbeach, the altar. Hatahor,
the only person in this conference.
The pure altar, the clean altar. This is attributive. Habat Hatova, this is the good daughter. This is attributive. They both have the definite article. Number 5, Tmeim Ha'elim. So this would be the, I usually go with impure or unclean on Tameh, but that doesn't work really well with Elim. He's not going to provide a translation. So impure gods, I suppose, or no, the gods are impure or the gods are unclean. Sort of sounds weird in English. We don't, use that phrase very often, but this would be predicative because your noun has the article and your adjective lacks the article. Number 6, we've got Elohim HaChaim. So the living God would be a suitable translation here. Chaim is plural because Elohim is plural. But if Elohim as a word refers to the God of Israel, then you're not going to translate it as plural. You could say the living gods, but in the scriptures, I don't know that the adjective living is ever applied to Elim or Elohim other than the God of Israel. All right, number 7, Gedolim ha-begadim. This is going to be predicative. We've got a definite article on begadim and no article on gedolim. Number 8, predicative, rasha'ah. lacks the article, and ha malkut has the article. Here, malkut is feminine, as you can see from the adjective, the comments hey here. Most, and most, this isn't certain, but often when a word ends in a tav, especially nouns, almost all, the vast majority of nouns that end in a tav are still going to be feminine, even though they don't end in comments hey. All right, number 9, we have Lev, Chacham. So this is a wise heart. Here, when you have no articles on any of them, technically it could go either way. I would say the thing that sort of pushes this to the side of being attributive is the fact that the adjective comes after the noun. So I would say a wise heart, attributive here. And number 10, we have ha-aratzot, ha-rabot. So both of these have the article. They're both definite, so it's going to be attributive. This is going to be the great lands, which is another weird phrase, but it is what it is. Check back over here. All right, and let's see, next after C, we've got F and then G, so we're moving right along here. All right, translation. Let's see, we'll take, looks like number 3 is the longest. So again, sort of my strategy, my methodology for Hebrew translation, when I have a sentence, I'm going to expect the first word to be a verb. Now, 30 or so % of the time it won't be a verb, but if I come at it with the expectation that that is a verb, that's going to help me recognize the word a lot more. I have to remember, if I'm trying really hard to figure out what this verb is, maybe it's just not a verb. That's always a possibility, but I'm always going to start with the assumption that the first word is a verb and that it's going to be immediately followed by its subject if it has an explicit subject, and then we'll have the direct object following that. So that's kind of my expectations as I approach a sentence in Hebrew. So the first word here, natan, thankfully, that's very easily recognizable. That's a vocabulary word we've had. It's actually the lexical form, so I know right away that natan means gave, he gave. If I have an explicit subject, which is usually only going to happen in the third person, if it's second person or first person, the explicit subject would just be the personal pronoun. Excuse me. But when I'm in the third person, it's common for me to have an explicit subject. So here, he gave. Who gave? Ha-kohen. The priest gave. The priest gave what? Et ha-zevachim. So the sacrifices. The priest gave the sacrifices. Ha-tehorim. So, ha-zevachim ha-tehorim. The priest gave the sacrifices, the pure ones, or the clean ones. The priest gave the clean sacrifices. And since we're in the realm of sacrifices, and we're now talking about a locational preposition, lifnei, where he gave them, probably better to translate natan as the priest offered the clean sacrifices or the pure sacrifices before hamizbeach, before the altar. I'm not a fan of translating natan as sacrifice here. You might find some English translations that translate natan as the priest sacrificed the sacrifices, the pure ones, the pure sacrifices before the altar. But first of all, in first year Hebrew, you need to show me that you know what this noun means. And if you want flexibility, then offered is a perfectly acceptable meaning other than gave. But don't use sacrificed as a verb for natan, even in this specific situation, because it almost it's almost worse. It's almost worse English that way. The priest sacrificed the sacrifices. Like, The Hebrew isn't that redundant, so why make your English translation that redundant? All right. Let's see here. That was number 3. So translate. Let's see here. Ryan, do you have a preference on any of these translations? Anyone that you want to look at or go over? Otherwise, I'll just kind of pick one at random.
Exodus 18:17. I still have problems with the prefix to tov there.
Was it? Where am I at? 18:17. Enough. All right. Let's see here. All right. So Futato pulls these kind of. Futato's going to take the verse and sort of make some changes to eliminate things that you don't know yet or haven't seen. I like to just translate it in its context because even if you haven't seen something, it's good kind of what we might call pre-learning. It kind of opens up a space in your head for information that you will learn eventually. So I'm just going to treat this like a regular translation in, I think it was C there. We'll just go through here. So once again, coming to a Hebrew sentence, I'm going to assume that the first word is a verb, and I'm just going to go through that way. So I look here, and if you remember, lesson 11 this week about imperfect, you may recognize here that I've got amar. Now the vowels look funny, but I've got amar here, and I've got a yod on the front. Well, in the imperfect, instead of putting suffixes on all of the verb forms to conjugate for person and gender and number, like we did in the perfect conjugation. By the way, that's why the perfect conjugation is sometimes referred to as the suffix conjugation. Instead, the imperfect conjugation, also known as the prefix conjugation, instead of throwing stuff on the end of every form, it throws stuff on the beginning of every form. Now, as you've seen, the imperfect also has some suffixes, but not every form has a suffix. Every form of the imperfect has a prefix. And when we have a yod, that yod indicates third person. When we have a yod with no suffix, that is third person masculine singular. And so this is Cal imperfect 3ms. Amar, the lexical form, means he said or he spoke, and so the imperfect form would mean he will say or he will speak. Now, something that we're going to learn about later on is you'll notice there's a vav on the beginning of this word. And not only is there a vav, there's a particular vowel morphological pattern that's happening here that's very similar to the definite article. The definite article gives you a hey, a patach, and a dagesh. Well, this is almost like a verbal form of the definite article, morphologically speaking. The difference is, one, verbs can't take a definite article, so it's not making it definite, it's doing something else to it. And secondly, it's a vav instead of a hey. But what this does, this sort of vav definite article pattern that happens on verbs, is instead of the definite article making a noun definite, this vav thing, which is called a vav relative or a vav consecutive, a lot of different words for it. Futato calls it a vav relative. When you see basically the markings of the definite article on a verb, but it's vav instead of hey, what that tends to do is it tends to invert the conjugation. So instead of reading this as an imperfect, instead of translating this as an imperfect, which we would normally do in the future tense in English, this vav relative flips that conjunction, and we're actually going to translate this as if it were a perfect. So instead of he will say, we're going to translate this with the vav relative. We're going to translate this as and he said. All right. And he said, chotain. Now, I do not recognize chotain. This is a verb that I am not familiar with. If you look down here, when I hover, a little definition will pop up. But actually, I'm going to do it this way. I'm just going to double click and open it up in my lexicon here. So, chotain, possessing a son-in-law. All right, so it's the word for father-in-law. So, the father-in-law of Moshe, Moses. Now, I wouldn't know that this is in construct because one, it's not some sort of obvious construct form. Two, I don't even know what the lexical form is without looking it up. Three, it actually isn't any different from the lexical form. And four, there was something else, but there's no way for me to know that this is construct other than the fact that if you look at these vowels, the sere, there's this little, I don't even know what you call it, but this little angle here. And then under Moshe, there's this little angle here. And it's almost like it's drawing these two words together. All right, these are Masoretic markings that indicate that these two words belong together. Now, since Moshe is definite, even though it doesn't have the definite article, it's the name Moses. Since it is definite, its construct will be definite. So this is, and he said, and who said? The father-in-law of Moses said, Elav, to him, basically, lo tov, not good, hadavar, the word or the message, which you are doing. This is a participle. Again, participles will be next semester, but which you are doing. So I would translate this as, and the father-in-law of Moses said to him, not good, it is not good, or the message which you are doing is not good. Now, davar, this is, in this context, because it's what you're doing, this is probably not word, this is probably the matter or the thing. So the matter that you're doing, the thing that you're doing is not good, basically. Now let me look and see how Futato, he just has not good, the matter, I guess that's it. Is that all he has is lo tov hadavar? Because it looks like who goes with 4, and who up here goes with 2. So lo tov hadavar. So he really doesn't have hardly anything there. Ryan, what was it that you said specifically you were having trouble with on here?
I still don't understand the prepositions very well, like the low tone, and that means a negative. I guess I'm kind of getting those prepositions confused.
Okay, well, lo tov here, it's kind of functioning as one word. That's what the makef does. Lo is just a negative particle. Have we had lo as a vocabulary word yet?
So I think it was. I was just trying to look for it, but yeah, I think it was on like lesson. Oh yeah.
Lesson 7. Okay, yeah, so lo is usually used as just a something that negates whatever comes after it. So when it's in front of a verb, it's negating the verb. When it's in front of the subject, it's negating the subject. When it's in front of the direct object, that's what it's negating. In this case, when it is in front of this adjective, it's basically saying not good. So the matter that you, or the thing that you, the thing which, the thing that you, and they, again here, this ose, this is a participle form, which means doing, ongoing action, is not good. So lo tov might be a word for bad. It might be another way to translate lo tov, because it is functioning as a singular word here. But lo is just a particle, tov is an adjective. Ale here is a preposition. Now it's a little bit confusing because there are unexpected times when L is going to lengthen to a sere, and I'm going to see if this lexicon has anything to say about that. Because I am a little bit surprised that it's a sere here instead of a segel. Let me see what I can find. Yeah, it might just be any time. I'm trying to find an example where it has a pronominal suffix that it doesn't lengthen. It looks like it might just lengthen any time a pronominal suffix, so like an object of the preposition is added, which makes me... The problem is I'm teaching one Hebrew 1 class and one Hebrew 2 class, and I can never remember which classes we have. Okay, so this is unfortunate because, I guess Futato didn't include this word, but we haven't even looked at pronominal suffixes yet. So lesson 16, we'll look at possessive suffixes, lesson 19, possessive suffixes, and then lesson 22, this will be next semester, we'll look at pronoun suffixes on prepositions. So what's going on here in a lov is this is a particular suffix that's telling you the object of to is him. So this basically means to him. Now that is why Futato doesn't include that word, because you haven't learned how to recognize what's going on here. But as far as what Futato did include, lo tov, this is simply the word for no or not. Tov is the word for good. Hadavar, the matter, or the thing, or the word. Assure, which, ata, you, and then ose here, this isn't something that you've had before, but all he included was lo tov hadavar, which means not good is the word. And I think what he's getting at with his example is lo tov is indefinite, it doesn't have a definite article, while hadavar does. And so he just wants you to pick up on the fact that this is a predicative construction rather than an attributive one. So instead of the not good thing which you are doing, it means the thing which you are doing is not good. That's basically his point there. Does that make sense? Any other questions about that or any other exercise there?
No, I don't think so.
Was there anything you wanted to cover in particular, either from previous lessons or this lesson? I am planning on kind of going through the imperfect, just to point out a few things about the conjugation, but I want to make sure that any specific questions you guys have, I deal with those first.
My only question related to is whether vocabulary chapter 5 is what will
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, let me take a look at that real quick. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick because I don't want to broadcast the quiz. But let me see what's going on here. That seems like a typo, but I would think that the quizzes are usually cumulative, like there are going to be words that you've had before. It's just weighted toward the most recent chapter. Let me see that I can.
I assumed, but since it said that in the unit.
All right, I'm going to look at the chapter 5 vocabulary and see what it is first. All right, so pull up. I need to go ahead and pause my backup recording too, otherwise that one will have the quiz in it. All right, I'm going to bring my screen back up. All right, so the cal imperfect, like I said before, this is sometimes referred to as the prefix conjugation because you basically take the root and instead of adding suffixes to all of the forms, you add prefixes to all of the forms. So third person, you can just go ahead and in your mind associate the yod with third person. That's going to be very common going forward. I know 3FS has the tav here, but there are, let me see. No, there aren't any exceptions. The yod prefix is going to be third masculine. The tav here is going to be associated with the second person for the most part. It is going to come from the second person pronouns atah and at. You see they both have tavs, and so that's why when you see a tav, you can think second person. Now, the masculine form is just the tav prefix with no suffix. The feminine singular, second feminine singular form is the tav prefix with the hirik yod suffix. The 3FS is identical to the 2MS. And you might think, well, that's strange. Why would they do that? Honestly, like, it's probably better to think of it as when you have a third feminine singular subject, Hebrew just uses the 2MS form. It's not like they intentionally had two identical forms. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not two identical forms. It's one form. It's just when the subject is third feminine singular, Hebrew, for whatever reason, uses the 2MS form. Now, when you're parsing, you want to go ahead and parse this as 3FS if the subject is third feminine singular, but I don't want you to think that for some reason Hebrew decided, well, we're going to use two identical forms for two completely different conjugations. No, it's just there is no unique form for the third feminine singular. It just uses the 2MS form. Hopefully that's not confusing for you, but it makes a whole lot more sense than why you would separate 3FS and 3MS like this. So all that to say, when you see a tav prefix, think second person, but there will be an exception for the third feminine singular and the third feminine plural. There we go. Third feminine plural over here. So, let's see. I don't really understand what's happening here. I've got typos. Oh, gee whiz. Hopefully your printed book looks different. But you can see that I've got an obvious, really bad typo on the 3FP and the 2FP. This tav hirik is supposed to be at the front, and this one is as well. So, gee whiz. Thanks, Logos. So that said, yod 3MS, or yod is also 3MP. Go ahead.
What's strange about that typo in the Logos is that Futato, when Daily Dose of Hebrew, uses the Logos text as well and makes it more confusing, honestly.
Makes what? Oh, does the error occur in his chart? Oh, well, interesting. That's all right. Well, that's unique. Yeah, yod, think third masculine. It also occurs not only in the singular but also the plural. In the plural, we add the shuric suffix, just like we did in the perfect to designate third person plural. We add that shuric back here to designate the plural form of the third masculine. Um, let's see. So the tavs are based on ata and ot. The aleph that occurs in the 1CS, that comes from the aleph in the pronoun for I. And let's see here. When I say it comes from, I'm not saying Hebrew said, hey, let's grab the aleph and stick it on the verb. The better way to say is just that's how you can keep track. That's how you can remember that the aleph indicates first person is the aleph here. I would say the aleph noon here because these have an aleph too, so don't get confused. You've got an aleph noon here. First common singular is aleph. First common plural is noon. That's the way I would memorize it. The aleph and noon go together on 1CS and 1CP. The 3FP and the 2FP are identical. So there is no distinct form to say those ladies did something versus you ladies did something. The feminine plural is the same form whether you're talking about those ladies or you ladies. That's this tiktolna. It's the same whether it's second person or third person in the feminine plural. The difference between 3MP and 2MP is we go from a yod prefix shuric suffix to a tav prefix shuric suffix. So again, the tav there indicates second person. And then finally, the 1CP here, niktol. This is coming from that, again, aleph noon beginning. So you can remember noon as 1CP. Now, what I recommend, first of all, since there are errors over here, I'm just going to ignore these two columns and I'm going to look at this column on the far left. What you want to do, and I should have said this for the perfect as well, something that I think helps you get these forms in your head is to go through them in sort of a rhythmic sense that your brain can latch on to so that you can just in your head throughout the day kind of go through the conjugation of the imperfect. So if we're using katal for the perfect, it would be something like katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. And just, you can pick whatever rhythm you want, but just boom, 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 boom. Just say it to a rhythm over and over again so that you can get those sounds in your head, and that will help you remember the conjugation better. So, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. And then for the imperfect, we've got yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol. Yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. And if you can go through those and just add that sort of rhythm to how you're saying it, it'll stick in your head a whole lot better, I think. That's what worked for me anyways. That's what my teacher kind of taught us to do. So hopefully that's helpful. But you seriously need to be able to, in the Pratico van Pelt Hebrew text, that's the one that Zondervan does, the big red book, he often tells you to memorize this like a robot, where you can sit down, someone can say, give me the perfect paradigm, and you can go, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti, katalu, kataltem, kataltan, katalnu. Give me the imperfect paradigm, yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol. Yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. Where you can just speedily go through it like that. Until you're able to do that, you can't really say you've mastered the paradigm. Now, you may be a long way from that right now because you've just learned this, and that's fine. But you want to just find times throughout the day to kind of go through that, and as you, week after week, keep doing that, day after day, keep doing that, it's going to come so much quicker to you. And I think that's really what's going to help as far as parsing goes, is when you actually pronounce the word that you see, you'll remember it in the conjugation rhythm that you have, and you can even match it up like, okay, so I see tick-to-lee. Which one was tick-to-lee? Let's see, we've got yick-tol, tick-tol, tick-tol, tick-to-lee. It's that one. Okay, that was the 2FS. So it's just if you can get a rhythm down, I think your brain latches onto it a little bit more securely. All right, so a couple things to be aware of in the vowel side of this. And honestly, what I would recommend focusing on is the letters. If you see ktol, just ignore the vowels for now. If you see ktol and you see a yod in front of it with nothing after it, the only time that occurs here is 3ms of the imperfect. You don't even need to know what the vowels are at this point. Now, the vowels are going to be helpful later when we learn other stems, because just seeing yod, kof, tet, lamed, that doesn't tell you whether this is cal or nifal or pl or anything like that. But right now, you know that this is imperfect and not perfect. When you see a tav in front of ktol, well, you know that this is either 3FS or 2MS. When you see a tav in front and a yod in front, that's 2FS. So far, the vowels don't make any difference. The consonants are enough to tell you. So if I see an aleph in front of the root, that tells me it's imperfect, and it tells me it's 1CS. So especially pay attention to the letters. The vowels are going to be important to know because you're going to see basically the distinction between the cal form and the other patterns that we'll learn. The distinction between those is primarily the vowels. So they are important, but right now you need to focus on these letters, and that should be helpful enough. Now, we saw in the perfect that when we have ktol, let's ignore this yod out here for a second. In the perfect, our vowel pattern was komets, patach. Now, when we have a stative verb, that patach may be a holum or a sere, but for the most part, our vowel pattern in the perfect is komets, patach. Often, the patach will reduce to a shavah to make room for a consonantal suffix in the perfect. And sometimes the komets even will reduce to a shavah to make room for those heavy endings, the tem and the ten suffixes. But we know that preceding those shavahs, the standard vowel pattern was komets patach. All right? And then there are variations where we could get komets holum or komets sere for stative verbs. Okay, the primary vowel pattern for the imperfect is going to be a heric prefix vowel, and then the R1 letter is going to be used to close that first syllable, and so you'll have a silent shavah here whenever R1 can take a silent shavah. We will learn at a certain point that there are several guttural letters that cannot take a silent shavah, and so we'll see what those take later. But for regular strong verbs, you're going to have a heric prefix vowel. You're going to have a silent shavah in R1. Then R2 letter here, the tet, this is going to start a new syllable, and its vowel is going to be holum. The second most common, what we call theme vowel or R2 vowel, usually it's going to be holum. Like in the perfect, it's usually patach. But there are times when it shifts. Instead of a holum, you will get a patach down here. There are some verbs that will be, let's say most imperfect verbs are going to be heric prefix, silent shavah in R1, holum in R2. But there are a significant number of imperfects that are going to be heric prefix, silent shavah in R1, patach in R2, and that's something to just be aware of. All right, so this R2 vowel, this theme vowel, is very much indicative of the stem or of the conjugation that you're in and the stem that you're in. So that's something to be aware of. Just a couple notes on morphology. The reason why we go from a holum theme vowel in the tet to a shava down here is the same reason that we went from, in the perfect, katal to katala, where the tet then had a shava. It's to make room for this extra syllable that's added here with the hirik yod. So if you count shavas, vocal shavas, as half syllables, we still only have 2 full syllables in this word. Tik, tli. Tik, tli. And remember, Hebrew wants to avoid more than 2 full syllables if it can. All right? So then with ektol, we get back here, we get our regular holum. Now it's important to know that in the 1CS, this hirik is going to shift to a segel. And that's just because segel is easier to pronounce with an aleph than hirik is. But this isn't irregular. Every time you see a 1CS, you can expect in the imperfect to see a segel under that aleph there. All right, but it doesn't happen under the noon in the 1CP. It's just that aleph one. All right, so then when we get to the 3MP, we have the same change happen in the tet as happened in the 2FS. When we add this vocalic suffix, the hirik yod, we've added a new syllable, and so we need to shorten this vowel in order to make room for it. So here we still have 2 full syllables, yik, tlu, yik, tlu. All right, now when we get to 3FP, we can't reduce it anymore, because if we did, we'd have 3 shavas in a row. So what we do here is something similar to what we did in the perfect. For the 2MS, the 1CS, the 1CP, we do this accent shift. So instead of being accented on the final syllable, where we've got 2 full syllables before that, we break it up a little bit. We accent this syllable instead. So it's not tiktolna, it's tiktolna. Tiktolna. So this is 3 syllables, 3 full syllables, but we've shifted the accent to kind of break the flow of it up. We're not trying to rush 2 full syllables before an accent. We're going to go ahead and accent it in the middle so that we can take a little bit of stress off the end. So tiktolna. All right. Then again here we've got tiktlu. That's just like yiktlu. The holum is going to reduce to a shava because we've added a vocalic ending. Tiktolna down here is identical to tiktolna up here. It's the same form. And then finally we've got niktol. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. Like he says here, the imperfect is often translated as a future in English. That doesn't mean that imperfect means it's happening in the future. Imperfect and perfect have to do with whether the action is being described as completed or uncompleted. And so you can have completed action in the future. We have a future perfect in English where I could say something like, by the time my wife gets home, I will have already mowed the lawn. So will have, mowed, is future perfect, and that is a completed action. The action will be complete by the time my wife gets home. So completed action versus incompleted action or uncompleted action doesn't demand a certain time setting. Perfect could be describing an event in the past, present, or future. Imperfect could be describing an event in the past, present, or future. The reason why we tend to use past tense as our English translation of the Hebrew perfect is because the quantity in English of verbs that describe completed action, by far, there are more past tense verbs that do that than future tense verbs that do that. The same way, when we're describing uncompleted action, by far in English, future is almost always going to be uncompleted action. Now, there's exceptions, like I said, with the future perfect. I will have mowed the lawn by the time my wife gets home. But it's also, like he mentions here, very common to use or to translate the imperfect in Hebrew as a present progressive. So that would be, he is seeking. would be present progressive translation of Yid. That's hard to say. Yid Rosh. He is seeking would be an acceptable translation. Now, on your quizzes, please just use the future tense. You're not going to be given any translations this semester where you should use the present progressive instead of the future. So wait until second year Hebrew to start incorporating the present progressive as your translation of the imperfect. It's just going to cause too much confusion. You're inevitably going to be using it at the wrong time in the wrong way where it means something that it shouldn't. So for now, just stick with the perfect. I just want you to know that as you go on in Hebrew, you'll start to see that there are situations where it does make sense to translate a Hebrew imperfect as present progressive. All right. Let's see here.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed on the exercises, the third person was not usually translated as he. He is seeking. Since there was another subject there, it was usually
right.
Subject.
You only include the English pronoun he when there's not an explicit subject. So if this was Yid Rosh Ha Kohen, the priest is seeking, you would never translate that as the priest he is seeking. You only use that he pronoun when Hebrew doesn't have an explicit subject there. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, that can be confusing for people because when you translate it literally and we tell you that, Yiktov means he will write, and then you have a subject, you're still translating this as he will write, the priest or the scribe or something. No. We only use the he or the she or the they pronoun in English when Hebrew does not make a subject explicit. When it's implied by the verb, that's when we use that pronoun.
all right. That's helpful. Thank you.
All right. Looking at the vocabulary here, most of you should know Torah. Modern Hebrew is going to pronounce this as Torah. But in biblical Hebrew, the accent is on the last syllable, Torah, Torot. Teaching, law, instruction. It doesn't just mean when we think law, we think of like a statute or something. Chok or chuk, I can never remember. I think it's chok. That is the better word for like a regulation or a statute. Torah is more the idea of teaching or instruction. Now, the principles in that teaching are the reason why Greek uses the word nomos, the word for principle. But when you think Torah, you should think more instruction or teaching than like a rule, because rules are part of instruction. I'm not saying that there aren't rules in the meaning of Torah, but it's broader than just rules. So you want to think of Torah as instruction or teaching. Maybe guidance is probably a little too vague, but instruction is really closer to what Torah means. Amar, this can mean he said. It can even mean he affirmed. It can even mean he thought. So it has broad meaning. I think my mnemonic for this was like, I would never say anything to put a mar on his reputation or to mar his so amar to say, but my mnemonics are notoriously terrible. Avar, to go across or to transgress. It can also mean go over. It really has the idea of going over or going past or going beyond, which is why transgress is one of the meanings, because you go beyond what you're supposed to. You go beyond the rules that are in place, that sort of idea. So avar has the more literal meaning of to go on, go beyond, go across, cross over, but it can be used in a more abstract sense of to break a rule or to sin or to transgress. Don't say sin here. Say transgress if you're going to use it in reference to breaking a rule. Say transgress, because sin is a different sort of meaning than what avar is. But transgress, trespass, that would be the idea of avar. Ahmad, he stood. I think my mnemonic for this was something like he was mad enough to take a stand. Again, not great, but it worked for me. Pakad, he visited, he took care of. Honestly, I saw it can also mean like bother or attend to. It can have a range of connotations. It can be helpful connotations or unhelpful ones like bother. Pakad, I just see a rooster going around pecking at something and it won't stop. It just keeps going on. So that's not good for take care of, but it's that idea of it's always there. That's the idea of pakad, to attend to be near, to visit, to watch over, to care for. Pakad is this idea of being close and interacting, I guess. When I say bother, it's that idea of always there. So it's much more frequently going to have a positive connotation. If someone's always there, then they're taking care of you, they're with you, they're there for you, that sort of idea. So pakad has this connotation of kind of being there for someone. So visit, take care of. Ohel. Ohel is tent. Uh-oh, I'm going to have to wrap this up soon. Ohel is tent. The mnemonic that my professor gave me had to do with his tent collapsing. I'll let you fill in the blanks. Safer. Safer is the word for book. It really is better for, like, they didn't have books like we have where all these pages are kind of glued together in a spine. That didn't happen until the 1st century AD, maybe the 2nd century AD, actually. What book meant to them was a scroll. So, like the book of Isaiah would be in a scroll, or it would just be a document. So, something that has something written on it. So, it's a written thing, is what a sefer is. A sefer is some sort of writing. Kodesh, we've had kadosh before, I'm pretty sure. Kodesh, which is the Segalit version of this, where we accent the first syllable. Kodesh is the noun. So you're going to get these confused, Kodesh and Kadosh. Just remember that the Segalit is the noun, and the adjectives often have a very long vowel in their second syllable. So Kadosh, Tehor, things like this. That's kind of how I keep them separate. So holiness is the noun, holy is the adjective. Finally, we have, or not finally, but kol. Kol is voice or sound. I don't have a mnemonic for this. Kol. I think when I did, it was something like he called out in a long voice, or a long voice. He called out in a loud voice. Kol, call. But kol can even mean noise. It's a sound, but someone's sound is their voice. And then Shana is year. For this, you can think Rosh Hashanah. Modern Hebrew says Rosh Hashanah. But again, biblical Hebrew accented the final syllable. So Rosh Hashanah would be the head of the year. So that's New Year. Rosh Hashanah is New Year in modern Hebrew. So that might be helpful for you. Other than that, that's about all I have for this one. Obviously, you saw that my battery is slowly dying, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But if you have a couple other questions, let me know.